great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, it's time for another very exciting episode of a Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us. Last week, we learned that the Director of National Intelligence, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, was investigating Democrats on the Senate Intel Committee for the leaking of classified information. And then basically the next day, big, bald moron Senator Mark Kelly goes out and leaks classified intelligence on television. So now he's under investigation by the Pentagon. So we now have dueling investigations focusing on one party, one committee, and a serious lack of ethics. So much more than that happening, but gosh, I'm excited. All right, things are changing in the UK as well. Looks like Keir Starmer might be getting kicked out of his job. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, grab your popcorn. We're going to be right back in just a moment. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This isn't just government spending, it's a declaration of intent because America needs uranium, domestic uranium, and it needs it now. So here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium every single year, but we produce less than 1 million pounds domestically. Obviously, that leaves America 98% dependent on foreign suppliers for our supply. It's a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced weapons systems. With Russia controlling much of the global enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran threatening nuclear supply, the stakes could not be higher, which is why the White House has made it crystal clear. America must develop its own supply chain. And this is where Kirkstone Metals comes in. They trade under KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. They've got decades of uranium and junior mining expertise, and Kirkstone's leadership team knows how to turn exploration projects into real value. But the question is, can they do it again? Kirkstone controls two 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Athabasca Basin. This is the richest uranium district on the planet. Same area, same world-class neighborhood, and at their flagship Key Lake project, drilling has already hit high-grade uranium right near the surface, but the team truly believes the real prize lies deep underground. So using a playbook based on the decade's biggest discoveries, they're hunting the massive source below. So let's talk about the Athabasca Basin. It's home to multi-billion-dollar names like NextGen Energy and Denison Mines, but the real upside, it's often the junior explorers that are operating right next door. The Athabasca Basin has delivered over 20% of the world's uranium discoveries, with an estimated $200 to $300 billion worth of uranium identified in the ground, and yet Kirkstone is still sitting at a market cap below $12 million. That's an enormous disconnect between what's found in this district and how some companies are valued today. On January 14th, the U.S. administration reinforced their commitment to domestic energy security, invoking Section 232 via an executive order. It's a formal declaration of resource independence, and it goes beyond support. It's a mandate. Energy security is now national security. and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory tools to secure the nuclear fuel cycle in North America. Kirkstone Metals, trading as KSMCF in the U.S. and KSM in Canada, is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Now, uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Federal momentum has already begun to translate into dollars on the ground, including billions in planned funding for domestic uranium enrichment capacity. The sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years, and with its flagship drill program approved, Kirkstone has exploration underway, and they're advancing with a focus on execution. Some companies operating in the district are valued at over $10 billion, and with the U.S. pushing for domestic uranium, Kirkstone could potentially become a leading beneficiary of the reshoring mandate. So if you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and about a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. And a very special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are going to begin today by taking a closer look once again at Los Angeles. Now, if you've been following Spencer Pratt's rise, his ascendancy to what will hopefully become the mayoral office later on this year, well, obviously he'll take the office next year, but he'll be elected later on this year. You'll know that because of Spencer Pratt's experience as a homeowner in the Palisades, he and a bunch of other homeowners in the area were successful in getting a lawsuit together off the ground against not only the city, but also the state of California. Spencer has also been speaking with representatives of the federal government, talking about a whole host of different schemes and scams that California state and local government were engaging in, such as the theft of $100 million in fire aid that was meant to go to the residents of the Palisades to help them build back their homes. Now, we covered that many, many months ago, and essentially what happened was that money was funneled into the coffers of a whole host of non-governmental organizations, 501c3s that would be based in California, but they never actually gave any money to the real homeowners of the Pacific Palisades. And in fact, you could find that you could apply for grants from these non-governmental organizations that received a portion of that $100 million. But in order to get a portion of those grants, you had to be a black or a brown person. They intentionally discriminated against white people. And that is just a very, very small portion of the long-term ongoing grift taking place in California. Now, Spencer spoke with an interviewer over the weekend, and he said that one of the first things that's going to happen once he gets into office, and he said this publicly on a number of occasions, but they are planning to audit every single NGO. But he gave just a couple of additional tidbits of exactly how that's going to look. Let's go ahead and take a listen, because this is very, very interesting.
But in just the sense, it's an easy way out. Oh, we're solving this. We're working on this. Two ways you can look at it. I think they're all criminals. Thankfully, I've talked to the Justice Department sources, and city officials are going to go down. They are complicit. Here's the hard part about catching these people. They're literally taking money with poker chips, goods and services. Criminals are smart now. They're not just saying, Zell me the money.
Right.
But from my sources, we are going to see actual city officials go down. Not quick enough, because they gotta frame these people up. But again, how does Spencer stop this when he's mayor? I've met with the criminal investigation team at the IRS 6 times. First week in office, you bring all of them in. We audit every NGO, every document that hasn't been shredded. Now, some people, insiders at City Hall, have told me, they're shredding these documents. I have more faith in my criminal investigation team. They'll be able to figure out without the documents, even if they're shredded. But that's what's happening. They're shredding the documents.
So let me ask Karen.
And that should surprise no one. The criminals perpetuating this fraud want nothing more than to get away with it. But the only problem is that it would appear that Spencer, outside of meeting with the criminal investigative people at the Justice Department and at the IRS, he's also got people inside City Hall who are also cataloging the expanse of this fraud, the very people who are involved in it. And of course, many of the NGOs that are involved in the homeless industrial complex and the wholesale theft of all of this money out of the city of Los Angeles, they're already being investigated by the fraud department. They're already being investigated by Bill Asaley. So Spencer has a plan. It also would appear the federal government has a plan to come in with Spencer as soon as he is inaugurated. Now, they could throw a curveball and people could start coming in as soon as Spencer is declared the winner. Who knows how it's going to work out? But it appears to me that we are actually moving towards something very close to accountability. And I only stop and hesitate before saying 100% because it hasn't happened yet. But I'm very stoked to see how it goes down. So again, I am wishing Spencer all of the best. Now, also over the weekend, a local union put out an ad attacking Spencer and calling out many of the policies that he wants to implement. The really ironic thing is that if you're a normal person, if you're one of the same types of people that have had their homes stolen, if you're somebody who's watched the city of Los Angeles crumble and burn before your very eyes as city and state officials are siphoning money out of it and putting it into their own pockets, buying Lamborghinis and property up in massive property parcels in the Hollywood Hills, or maybe buying vineyards and giving kickbacks to their friends, well, then you would see this commercial and you would say, you know what? That guy, Spencer Pratt, he looks like somebody that I'd actually want to vote for. So essentially what this union did was create an ad which advertises for Spencer and makes you want to vote even harder. Let's take a listen.
Republican Spencer Pratt is the last thing Los Angeles needs for mayor. Pratt opposes using taxpayer money to build brand new houses for our unhoused neighbors, saying it's time for the homeless to get help or get out. Pratt thinks LA needs thousands more police officers rather than more social workers, and Republican Spencer Pratt thinks public employee unions should have less power, not more. LA is on the right track and needs to stay the course. Vote no on Republican Spencer Pratt.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, union. I think that actually all of those policies sound like exactly what they need. Now, somebody posted, the ad makes Pratt look like a waste, fraud, and abuse fighter who will use the savings to hire more cops and fully fund the LAPD, rather. Everyone knows public employee unions are bleeding taxpayers dry. The union putting this ad out should stick with kissing up to Newsom. So, I don't know if that guy supported Spencer in the beginning, but looks like a lot of people are seeing these ads and they're saying, well, gosh, that sounds like somebody I could actually support. All right. Now, we also do have a story about another mayor in a different part of the city. This time we're going to head down to Georgia. Now, normally, city government is not this sexy, right? I mean, Los Angeles, it's the home of Hollywood. You've got movies, you've got movie stars, you've got a lot of money, a lot of glitz and glamour, while underneath it, of course, you have poop-stained streets and homeless people setting dogs on fire and shooting up drugs and, of course, trafficking in children. But here in Cohutta, Georgia, things got a little crazy, and municipal government is generally supposed to be about just taking care of the needs of the people. Maybe a little bit of procedure, a little bit of paperwork. Hopefully it's going to be slow going because you don't have a whole bunch of fires that you have to put out. But in a little bit over the span of a week, this town in Georgia went from something that should have been workplace remediation involving the wife of the mayor, she's not even part of city government, to essentially firing the entire police department. And then, of course, they had to have an emergency meeting. They had to reinstate every single officer. The mayor looks like a total fool. Several of the officers of this police department had filed complaints about the mayor's wife. Her name is Pam. Now, Pam had previously been relieved from her duties as a town clerk because she was a bit of a bitch. She was creating a hostile work environment. And the officers all alleged that Pam still had access to private town information and other sensitive data that she should no longer have access to because she's no longer an employee of the town.
So this eventually led to a mediation process. You had the town on one side. I guess that they would be representing the police officers. And then you had the mayor on the other side. So the town attorney assured the local police officers their jobs were not in any sort of danger because obviously they're trying to do the right thing. But for some reason, the mayor did not like the fact that these police officers were tattling on his wife, and he quite literally fired every single one of them. A week later, this mayor had dissolved the entire police department. Now, this is not something that normally happens, and I am all for standing up for your woman. But if she got fired for a reason. You don't need to be causing this kind of havoc.
Well, I don't think it's that dire at all. They'll get a paycheck. We're not we're not that way, and I appreciate their service. Okay, it's just time for a change. It's a guy thing. Occasionally, college football programs you have to change the coach, and some people like it, some don't. And, that's just kind of the way it happens sometimes.
Okay, changing the coach would be akin to you stepping down from your position. I mean, that's what the elections are ostensibly for. If you act like a real asshole and you don't do your job as the mayor of a community, theoretically, somebody else is going to be able to come in and run against you, and then the town is going to vote for that person. Now, I don't know anything about the state of election integrity in Cohutta, Georgia. But firing the entire police department is essentially the same as firing every player on your team, leaving the coach the only one to take the ball into the end zone. And that's actually not going to happen. I know that this guy was not planning on going out and patrolling the streets himself.
Poured on the low country, right?
I think other people have.
That's really a more pressing issue here in Colorado than on the low country.
Come together, resolve concerns, and reaffirm our shared commitment.
However, this morning, a note was posted on the Cohutta Police Department's door.
Initial response from the town attorney: nobody's jobs are in jeopardy. Here we are less than a week later. Nobody has a job. We took a stand for transparency, and in result, every one of them's lost their jobs.
My understanding is that a lot of the police officers heard through the grapevine that they were going to be terminated because of the letters that they wrote. I don't think them exercising their, First Amendment right and filing complaints a valid reason to fire anybody.
It's definitely not a valid reason to fire anybody. Now, I saw somebody question this in the chat. So the sheriff would be in charge of the county sheriff's department. The chief of police would be in charge of the city police department, but those police officers would still be employees of that local jurisdiction of the Cohutta, the government of Cohutta, I guess. So when Ron, the mayor, was asked about this abrupt dissolution and whether or not he was concerned about the livelihoods of these officers, I would be worried personally about the safety of the town. But he basically said, nah, it's not a big deal. Like you saw there, he said they're going to get a paycheck. It kind of rambled on. I did not really understand the point there. But either way, the entire police force was reinstated. A nearby town's police department had temporarily aided Cohutta while these officers were no longer on duty. And interestingly, this guy is still mayor, but there is now calls for an investigation into his actions. If I was a resident of the city, I would probably seek to have him recalled because it sounds like he and his wife have a real issue with power, and they should not have it. Pure and simple. Now, speaking of people who should not have power, we're now going to jump over to Virginia. There is a new plot, apparently, to force redistricting on the state of Virginia. And it sounds like what the state legislature is considering doing is lowering the retirement age of the judges on the Virginia State Supreme Court. They would potentially lower it to 54 years of age, which would effectively force every single judge on that Supreme Court to retire, and then more judges would have to be chosen. Now, I'm not exactly certain on the nature of choosing these Supreme Court judges in the state of Virginia. I think it has something to do with the legislature, that the legislature actually puts the judges up. So it's not like you, the citizen of Virginia, get to vote on a judge. They're not running for office. They're not going to be put in place by the governor or something like that. But depending on who is controlling the legislature, that is who decides who sits on the Supreme Court. So Virginia Democrats are the ones that this plan is being revealed by. Essentially, they're looking at the scheme basically to purge the Virginia State Supreme Court after they had struck down the unconstitutional election to gerrymander and redistrict the entire state, effectively removing most Republican representation. So this idea would lower the mandatory retirement for judges from the age of 73 to 54, which again is exactly the age of the youngest sitting justice. So then everybody else would have to be forced off. And that youngest sitting justice was actually installed by, I believe, Democrats. So again, that would hand Democrat-controlled legislature the power to pack that Supreme Court with people that they want to see, people that undoubtedly they would believe to be sympathetic to their plans to redistrict. Now, Steve Scalise wrote, just so we're clear, Democrats want to rewrite the Virginia Constitution because the state Supreme Court rejected their unconstitutional maps. For a party that loves to chant no kings, this is very undemocratic. Yeah, not much about these people that is in line with the law. So they are struggling now to respond to this major redistricting setback. Seems like everybody's crashing out about this thing. And this idea initially was floated by party leaders as a far-fetched, albeit doable plan to be able to clear out the bench and put people in that essentially would just vote the way that they wanted to. Now, there was a private discussion this past Saturday, and that actually included members of the Democrat caucus in the Virginia State House, as well as Representative Hakeem Jeffries from New York, because he's the minority leader. And they were all pretty pissed about the loss on the Supreme Court. And one of these plans that they're looking to introduce would be to basically just pack the courts with people that they think they would be able to force into voting. Now, Abigail Spanberger, of course, who is the current governor of the state, apparently she was really upset with the state legislature because she thought this was a bad idea, didn't believe it to be constitutional in the first place, and she was kind of sold on the idea that they were just going to be able to sneak it through. But, of course, that did not work, and so now they are basically left twisting in the wind, and it's even possible that they might end up with less Democrat representation in the state now that they are likely to have to redraw the districts in a different way than they did before. Let me also now bring you to somebody else who I believe should be nowhere near the annals of power, and that would be Mark Elias. Mark Elias, for decades, has been the pit bull lawyer of the DNC, and he, too, is extremely upset after the failure of the Democrat-run legislature in Virginia. Now, he's also upset because Alabama has just filed an emergency appeal at the Supreme Court asking them to be allowed to also change their congressional districts. And their request is based upon the idea that their current map is racist, it's gerrymandered, and although there was some type of a decision related to this previously in a older case by the Supreme Court, all bets are off now that Louisiana's newly drawn congressional map has also been declared as a racial gerrymander. So let's go ahead and hear from Mark Elias. And of course, this is going to be just for educational purposes only.
Even this bag of pre-washed
just need to get past this commercial.
Just a few minutes with the produce cleaner, and this is what.
Oh, Nicole Wallace. She's very upset, too. Of course, the CIA does not like losing.
I've not heard you this angry in a long time. Just share with this how this scrambles your workload.
Like, look, I mean, in the end, here's why I'm angry. In the end, Democrats are still going to take control of the House. Okay? Like, that's the good news, right?
I
I don't think that that's the case, but we'll indulge him this opinion.
In the end, I think Democrats still could win the Senate. In the end, like, politics will be politics. But the reason why I am so angry is because the Supreme Court of the United States chose to strike down a law that was passed in 1965 that Congress was in dialogue with the court, over in the 1970s and 1980s. And for the last 40 years, we have lived under a set of principles that all players have accepted as a fair, level playing field.
Well, times change. Interpretations change as well. And considering the fact that we live in the United States of America, where all men are created equal, it is thoroughly unconstitutional and illegal to hold any one man above another based upon the color of their skin, what's between their legs, or even who it is they go to bed with at night, and especially who they pray to on Sundays or whatever day of the week it is that you're worshiping. But all of those things aside, humanity, when you're an American, is equal. Everyone is equal before the law. Now, in theory, that's correct. In practice, I know that that's a little naive, but this is why we have institutions like the Supreme Court to ensure that the laws of the land are going to try to back that up as much as possible. And what the Democrats have been able to get away with all of these decades was essentially unequal treatment of certain groups of people, either based upon political affiliation, the color of their skin, so on and so forth. And that day is done. It's not happening anymore, Mark Elias. And I can also say I believe that Mark Elias is under a fair amount of stress as well, because I think it's possible he may be in legal jeopardy. And he's been involved in some shady things over the years, allegedly, in my opinion, after looking into the various things that Mark Elias has attached his name to. One of those things being Hillary Clinton, who I think is also in great legal jeopardy. We'll get there, but let's finish this.
And then a group of white Louisianans decided to challenge a map, and the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the parties to argue a case that none of the parties wanted, which was whether the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was still in effect under the right test. And
actually, I think that's exactly what Louisiana was hoping to argue. So maybe the Democrats didn't want to argue it because they knew that based upon the plain text of the language, once it was to be interpreted, especially in light of all of the things that we've seen over the last many years, the blatant discrimination, the bad behavior on behalf of the Democrats. Mark Elias is definitely white. Mark Elias is white. But here's the thing. Mark Elias believes in power, okay? And for Mark, how you get to the coalition of that power doesn't matter. It's only going to matter that you hold that power at the end of the day. And so, party above principles, that is Mark Elias.
then the parties did it, and they chose to issue an opinion in the middle of May while primaries were going on. And then the U.S. Supreme Court thought, you know what? Sure, we let black voters wait 2 years and vote under illegal maps, but God forbid these white voters have to do the same in Louisiana. That would be a constitutional crisis.
What Mark is fundamentally seeming to ignore is that black voters also exist in the state of Louisiana. Undoubtedly, they were planning to vote in this primary, and they will vote in the primary. They'll also vote in the primary in Alabama. They'll also vote in the primaries coming up in any of these other southern states that are about to come up. He's also very big mad about Representative Steve Cohen, the chicken-eating guy, the Jewish representative who claims to represent black people and spent a ton of money trying to shut out a black female Republican from running for the district, which is now going to be reformed. And of course, she is likely to win. He will be out of a job. Either way, Mark is upset.
And against all of that backdrop, have we learned nothing? I mean, have we learned nothing? Has the broader legal community not learned anything? Other than the civil rights groups, have people not learned that when you do this to black voters, it turns out bad for democracy for everybody. So yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry because of the appalling silence that's going on right now around this case and the aftermath.
There's plenty of people talking about it, but they're talking about it in a very different way because it was a good decision. It was a very good decision. I'll tell you what's a bad decision. Memphis, Tennessee, Democrats in Memphis, Tennessee, are now openly talking about secession from the state of Tennessee based upon the Republicans in that state's recent redrawing of Tennessee congressional districts. So now you have black secessionists, black Democrat secessionists in Tennessee literally saying that they should completely break off from not only the state of Tennessee, but the United States of America. The South is going to rise again, ladies and gentlemen. The South is going to rise again. All right, so Tennessee Republicans ran through that new congressional map, and the Democrats in the state legislature were very, very upset. This dismantles the only Democrat-held congressional district, and again, that's centered in Memphis. And there was at least one furious Democrat now openly floating the idea of Memphis seceding from Tennessee. Tennessee state rep, his name is Antonio Parkinson. Apparently, he's unable to stomach the political reality of what a deep red Tennessee exercising their legislative authority actually looks like. So now he's calling for Memphis to separate from the state after this explosive redistricting battle. Now, I might have played like one clip of this the other day, but it was quite literally hell on earth. You had people grabbing the mic. They were screaming. They were absolutely rioting in the state capitol. There was at least one woman who got up on a desk and started twerking. Take a look.
If this body believes that Memphis should not have the right to elect representation reflective of its own community, the legislature should explain why Memphis should continue to be part of the state of Tennessee. Let Memphis secede. You don't have to redraw maps when you let us out. Let my people go.
Where are you going to go? Now other southern states are either considering or moving forward with their redistricting plans.
Okay, so just so everybody's clear, there's nothing wrong with my equipment. Occasionally, clips are mastered very low on the audio, and I've already got it cranked up to plus 5 decibels, which means that that's about as high as I can go so that I don't blow your eardrums out on the next clip that is likely to be a lot louder, which that one was a lot louder than the one with Mark Elias. So we're all just going to have to agree that there may be some times where you're going to have to turn up the volume on your phones or your televisions or whatever it might be. But I have my soundboard cranked all the way up to 11, and then I've got my software pushing it up another 5 decibels, and there's just some things that I can't do. I can't go in retroactively to somebody else's house who made that clip and tell them that it needs to be louder when they export it. And I do apologize for that. There's no way for me to do that. Teresa Pagano says, I am still laughing about this. This is something from my Attorney General, James Uthmeyer. Let me go ahead and see what that is. Oh, yes. Mark Elias just had a case dismissed against the state of Florida. Yes, here it is. Anyone who's wondering why DeSantis is waiting to sign the new Florida map, it is because he is scared he will lose in court. I beat Republicans before when they broke the state constitution by partisan redistricting, and I will do it again. Here are my receipts. And then right here. Hey, Mark, would you like to update everyone on the loss you took last night in the Northern District of Florida? Mark Elias also lost that case down here. And I got to say, I love it. Thank you so much to Moon Baby, who says, hey there, family. I appreciate it. Thank you to Eric Super Patriot. Thank you for the ship, Eric. RP, I watched some of your shows over on Rumble, but I am sending you a tip over here on Pilled. Well, I do appreciate that, my friend. Thank you so much for the generous support. All right, you guys, before we continue, I have a very quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me say thank you very much to them for supporting the show. You guys, I just have one quick question. How much control do you actually have over your own money. Like right now, technology is changing everything. And now, obviously, it's changing the way that money works. Crypto started out as a niche, but now it is basically mainstream. You get faster payments, more control. There's fewer middlemen taking a cut off at the top. This isn't hype. It is just where things are going. And getting started today is a lot easier than you might think. This is where the Rumble Wallet comes in. With Rumble Wallet, you can buy Bitcoin. You can hold dollar-backed stablecoins. You can even own digital gold, and that is actually backed by real gold, and it's all in one place. Setup is super simple. It connects with MoonPay, so then you can use your own debit card, your credit card, or your bank account, and you'll be up and running in minutes. It's not about the amount. It's really just about getting in early and understanding what's coming next. So once you get all set up, you can even tip your favorite Rumble creators, people like myself or others, directly. It's very, very easy. There is also no fees that come off the top. So do this right now if you don't have it yet. Scan that QR code on screen. You can click the link in the Rumble chat, or you can head on over directly to wallet.rumble.com. But either way, you get set up, you enter your Rumble ID, get signed in, and then you tap buy, and you're in the game. So take control of your own money and get started with Rumble Wallet today. And I literally had... I think maybe I had something in my pocket and I misplaced it. And I'm starting to kind of freak out in my own head as to where it might be. Maybe I put it over there. Okay, I'll look for it later. Anyways, this is kind of a shocking move from President Trump. I certainly was not expecting this. This was not on my bingo card. President Trump is apparently now considering making Venezuela the 51st state. Now, I looked for a clip of President Trump saying this. The closest I could find was it's the gold bar that I usually have on my desk right here, and I don't know where I put it. But either way, I was going to pull it out, but I don't have it. It's someplace else. I picked it up when I was cleaning. Okay, so President Trump said there's $40 trillion worth of oil in Venezuela, and Venezuela loves Trump. If that were to happen, if President Trump were to make Venezuela the 51st state, and then maybe make Greenland the 52nd state, man, I still don't think that's off the table yet. But anyways, President Trump also recently said, I'm going to go to Venezuela and I'm going to run for president. Now, of course, this could be classic Trump trolling, but he did say, so after I'm finished with this, I can go to Venezuela. I can quickly learn Spanish. It won't take too long. I'm good at language. Then say if I ran for president of Venezuela, I'm polling higher than anybody has ever polled in Venezuela. Anytime I hear President Trump talk like this, I immediately just think that it's trolling. But you never know. You never know with POTUS. All right, take a listen to this.
He kind of surprised me a little bit because he said, John, I just want to tell you, I'm very serious about this. So you can talk about this. I'm serious about beginning a process to make Venezuela the 51st state. Now, there's a rich history in this nation of taking territories and absorbing them into the United States. You know, Puerto Rico is one that people talk about. But this would be the first time, to my knowledge, that a sovereign country was ever invited to join the United States of America. How would that work?
Well, John, I won't get ahead of what the president was comfortable sharing with you as far as those plans go. But look, this is a president who is famous for never accepting the status quo. He is always considering a host of options to improve our country. And of course,
So the way that he posits that, like, I'm very serious about this. I want you to share it. Now, he could be serious about it, but he could also just be messing with everybody who would be really upset by this. However, it is a lot of money that is down there in Venezuela. And I'll be real honest, guys, if Venezuela becomes a 51st state and we can just go to Venezuela, I mean, like, hell, we got some property down in Venezuela, go live on the beach. How cool would that be? It would be great for the people of Venezuela. But of course, then we got to worry about all of those people who live there. And it's not part of the continental United States. It really would be an unprecedented move. I don't know. I'm more interested to see how this pans out to sort of determine whether or not President Trump is just trolling or if this is something that he's actually considering doing. Now, I mentioned Greenland, and what's also very interesting is that Greenland is also now back in the news? Well, Denmark is back in the news. Now, the current leftist prime minister of Denmark, Miss Fredriksen, has apparently collapsed her government, and she was trying to form a new government and was unsuccessful. So the king of Denmark has now tasked the defense minister, his name is Lund Poulsen, with forming a new government. And apparently he's a right wing. He's a conservative, so he's more aligned with President Trump. And Miss Fredriksen, of course, was famous for, standing up to Trump about Greenland for the Danes, but Greenland for Greenland, but not for the United States of America. She was prepared to send five troops to Greenland to stop the United States. Anyways, President Trump beat her into submission metaphorically, and we got all of those places for bases, and we also got the mineral rights. So, there's a lot that could happen here. But now that Mette Fredriksen has basically worn out her popularity in Denmark, she's got 2 terms under her belt. She's now famous for stopping Donald Trump, but then basically giving Donald Trump everything that he really wanted through the art of the deal. It turns out that she's not too popular. Now, Denmark also has a problem with the same sort of mass migration that a lot of other countries in Europe have as well. And so obviously the more conservative contingent in Denmark politics would like to do away with that as well. There were recently elections, and she is a social democrat, and apparently the Social Democrats had their worst showing in Denmark's election history. So she's now resigning, and there is this caretaker PM who is the defense minister, Troels Lund Poulsen. He's got to form a potential center-right government after the breakdown of negotiation among all of these parties. They're very, very similar to the United Kingdom. They have this parliamentary system, and so they have to form these coalitions. Apparently, they have 12 different parties, and it looks like Fredriksen was unable to bring these disparate portions of Denmark or Dane politics all together. So it did not work, and Lund Poulsen now apparently does have the support of the right wing and the centrist groups, and it looks like he may end up being prime minister. So the situation surrounding Greenland may very quickly be changing as well. So keep your eyes, not just here in the United States, but in other places. Now, that also brings us to the situation in Alberta. Now, there have been many people who suggested that Alberta should become the 51st state. Well, the only problem with that is Alberta doesn't really want to be the 51st state. They want to be a sovereign nation. And it would appear that the people who are behind the efforts to bring about independence for Alberta have already been in contact with people inside the Trump government. They've also been in contact with many different high-ranking CEOs and business owners here in the United States, so that as soon as they gain their independence, they would automatically be able to welcome in the United States and all of these partner companies so that they could very quickly develop their economy separately from Canada. Now, right here, we have the man behind the Alberta separatist movement. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Can you understand how, on the face of it, Canadians would view, some Canadians outside of the ones that support your cause, who are not necessarily unempathetic to the frustrations expressed by people in this province, but who would view the idea of, people here meeting with a government that has, spoken the way it has about this country as a whole as problematic and seeking money to make this happen.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome, but we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, flies in the face of, you know, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, you know, it would be a totally different conversation. But that's not the case. We're gratified that it's the case. And quite frankly, the Trump administration shows Albertans far more respect than is shown to Albertans by the government in Ottawa. Do you think three of us could get a meeting with Tim Hodgson to talk about the need for a pipeline to the Pacific Northwest so that David Eby can't continue to hold us hostage? Of course not, because they want us to be held hostage. So, you know, so I understand that there are Canadians that are upset, especially in Ontario, that when Alberta leaves, that Ontarians for the first time in their lives are going to have to pay their own bills and pay the bills of the Maritimes that we've been paying for years. I understand that's upsetting to people, but they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Do you believe, though, that the motivations of the people you're meeting with or in the Trump administration are altruistic? Like, do you think they want what's good for you and people who support your cause, or do you think that they're trying to leverage this to get the upper hand against the country of Canada as a whole?
I've studied foreign policy at the university level. I have an honors degree in political science and I have an honors degree in law from the London School of Economics. Don't you think that communist Ottawa is leveraging communist China against Alberta? I mean, come on. I mean, you know, we live in the world of realpolitik.
But you don't mind being a pawn in that fight?
We're not a pawn. I mean, we're talking to them about our aspirations and we have our goals and objectives. So, you know, we're not a pawn. We're actually more like a rook or a queen on a chessboard moving forward in the direction that we want to move freely on the board. You know, the pawns are the provincial premiers like Danielle Smith that are being manipulated by Carney and Eby and communist China to do their globalist bidding, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
When you mentioned
this guy is based, I love him.
That you've met with people in the State Department, you feel as though that message has been conveyed to Scott Bessent. That's why he made the comments he did. How high up are the meetings that you're taking? Are there names, for example, of people that you're meeting with that we would recognize offhand?
I'm not sure about that. Probably. I mean, we're meeting at a very high level. People in our meetings are going, you know, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we're not. We have an agreement with the people that we're meeting with that we're not disclosing the identities of the people that we're meeting with. So
why not? May I ask?
Well, because it's an agreement. So that's all.
But again, like,
it's called ethics, you dumb broad.
Would it be reasonable to question the motivations of making that
well,
agreement?
that's probably why we're not talking about it. We don't want them being bothered by people from the press in Canada asking them silly questions. They don't want to be wasting their time answering questions from the press, right? And we're fine with that. We don't care. I mean, we know already that our meetings are paying dividends when the U.S. Secretary of Treasury is announcing the fact that the U.S. would be open to a pipeline through the Pacific Northwest to take David Eby and communist China out of control of the Alberta oil field.
May I ask then, in a different way, have there been conversations, you know, among yourself or people in the movement with, for example, as high as President Trump?
No. Well, I mean, I haven't. I'm not sure about David Cameron. He's not really part of our movement and part of what we're doing. He's the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. He claims to have been to Mar-a-Lago and, you know, whatever. You know, we don't need to meet with President Trump. We're really technicians when it comes right down to it, right? At the end of the day, you know, our next delegation to Washington, you know, we're going to have bankers, economists, corporate lawyers, et cetera, to help with this feasibility study that we're conducting, right? And we're going to be putting together, you know, what a potential deal memo could look like and put together a complete dossier so that we can just hand it over to whoever the government of Alberta is in power and say, hey, if Ottawa is giving you a hard time, here's an easy way out. There's a large credit facility that's available through Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whoever in the event that Ottawa tries to cut off your money.
Boom. Sounds like he knows exactly what he's doing and they have all of their ducks lined up. This has got to be very stressful for the government in Ottawa. Very, very stressful for the entirety of Canada. Mark Carney is probably running scared. Of course, the United States is going to leverage the situation in Alberta against the communist Canadian government. And of course, the people of Alberta that are seeking their own predestination, they want their own sovereignty, they're going to exploit it as well. What's wrong with that? It's called politics. This woman knows that. She knows exactly what's going on there. But of course, she works for the mainstream media establishment. Now, we better do a pulse check on Representative Ilhan Omar because some new court documents have just come out over the weekend from the Feeding Our Future fraud scandal. And we knew that Ilhan Omar was implicated in these documents, but it might appear that she is perhaps implicated a little bit deeper than everybody knew. And of course, Ilhan Omar knew the entire time. Her name includes multiple communications within email chains. There's also text messages that have been sent and received by convicted fraudsters. One of them, the mastermind of the entire thing, Amy Bach. According to trial exhibits that were unsealed in Amy Bach's case, Ilhan Omar's office was directly involved in communications with Amy Bach and her fraud ring. Now, according to these resurfaced trial exhibits from Bach's 2025 conviction on wire fraud, conspiracy, bribery charges, there was one email chain between Bach and Omar's office that was literally titled Ilhan's Office. Now, another email from February of 2021 carried the subject line, help with USDA food program, right in the middle of the massive scam that was funneling hundreds of millions of dollars in federal pandemic funds to these fake meal sites, also helping the fraudsters to purchase luxury cars, jewelry, real estate overseas, and of course, palatial estates right here in the United States. We also have text messages recovered during a raid of Amy Bach's Minnesota home that showed direct communication between Amy Bach herself and Ilhan Omar's congressional staff. Well, things are not looking good. Now, I want to remind everybody, Amy Bach's sentencing is coming up rather soon. Is there a single person watching this stream right now, whether you support what I do or not, that believes Amy Bach wants to spend the formative portion of her adult life in prison when she could just as easily give information about Ilhan Omar and whatever scheme she played in this entire plan? A few days after Amy Bach sent an email to Ilhan Omar, this was February 28th, Amy Bach exchanged messages with Abdikerm Idala. That is a Feeding Our Future employee. This same employee fled the country after he was indicted in 2022. The subject line of the email was Ilhan's Office. Now, while the list of exhibits is public, the contents have been sealed by the court. Why do you think that would be? Are they afraid of letting the public see what is inside these documents? The exhibits also include a text message string between Bach and Omar, which was uncovered during that raid of Bach's home. Bach herself, we've talked about this very recently. She's been leaking documents from behind bars through her college-age son. Ahead of this sentencing, she wants to shift some of the blame to elected officials. She's also come out and suggested that Minnesota federal employees and federal elected officials were on board with what she was doing, that she's actually a pawn. She's a patsy in this entire thing. Keith Ellison, Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, they all knew exactly what was going on. Let's take a listen to this.
Fox News alert, Ilhan Omar missed Tuesday's deadline for Minnesota Republicans to turn over documents in the Minnesota Feeding Our Futures fraud scandal. Democrats blocked an effort to subpoena the Congresswoman, all as we learned that Omar's name came up 6 times in the case against Amy Bach, the founder of Feeding Our Future. Now, Bach spearheaded the scheme, which stole federal funds intended for children and was convicted of wire fraud, conspiracy, and bribery. Ilhan Omar's name first came up in an email chain with Bach back in February 2021. The subject line read, help with USDA food program, in a message to Omar's office.
Now, let me ask you this. If you're referring to a congressman in an email chain related to professional business, like I send an email out to Congressman Tim Burchett, okay? Or if I'm communicating with somebody about, say, my assistant, I'm like, I don't have an assistant, but if I did, and I said, please, Jimmy, I need you to send an email to Congressman Burchett's office, I would say Congressman Burchett. I wouldn't say Tim, right? And I know that Ilhan isn't a very common name, but it's got to be less so, I mean, like more common in the state of Minnesota because there's so many Muslims that live there, so many people of Somali descent. I mean, I can't imagine Ilhan Omar is the only Ilhan in the state. I mean, you say send an email to Ahmed.
And everybody replies and says, which Ahmed? Which Omar? Which Mohammed am I sending an email to? So the idea that they're saying, send this email to Ilhan, over and over and over again, it tends to suggest that they were a little bit more close, a cozier relationship.
About 2 weeks later, Bach emailed Omar's office with the subject line, FNS approves Minnesota school PEBT plan. Then 1 day later, Bach exchanged messages with this Feeding Our Future employee who fled the country after he was indicted in 2022. The subject line of their emails was Ilhan's office. And the emails kept flowing after that. In March, Bach emailed Omar's office again about the state's school food program. There were also text messages between Bach and Omar's office, which was uncovered during a raid of Bach's Minnesota house. Now, while we know Omar's office was communicating with a now convicted fraudster, we don't know the contents of those messages or if Omar herself engaged in any wrongdoing. In a jailhouse interview with Fox, this is how Bach described those conversations.
Did you have any conversations with Ilhan Omar that make you kind of think twice now?
I've never actually spoken to her. I had spoken to members of her office. It was always really general, mostly pertaining to how the Department of Education was handling applications and the approval or denial of those. There was nothing of any substance pertaining to claims or meal counts or fraud or anything like that.
But Omar's ties to Feeding Our Future don't start and end with Amy Bach. She also...
That's right, because Ilhan Omar was the one responsible for crafting the legislation which allowed Amy Bach to steal all of that money, along with all of her Somali co-conspirators.
Also had close ties with one of the restaurants convicted of stealing $16 million, Safari Restaurant. Back in 2018, she celebrated her primary win at the very spot. And records show she spent nearly $10,000 in campaign funds there between 2018 and 2020. It's over $3,000 a year. The food must be so great to spend that much at a restaurant. And check this out. We unearthed this 2020 video of Ilhan Omar on Somali TV working inside Safari Restaurant. And while she speaks exclusively in Somalian, we were able to make out these words: Pandemic, Meals Act, and Safari Restaurant. The chair of the Minnesota Fraud Committee also revealing Ilhan Omar received donations from several Feeding Our Future defendants. And that last name on the list right there, that's a former staffer for Omar who pled guilty to fraud. Here to react, Minnesota whistleblower David.
Now, David appeared on here, and he had a conversation about additional fraud that they have been discovering, fraud in other states. Maine came up on that conversation. J.D. Vance just announced that he's going to be visiting Maine on Thursday. No word on why he's choosing to go to Maine, but if I had to guess, I would say it's because he's going to announce a major operation with the fraud task force that's going to be taking place there. Now, there's already been ongoing investigations through Homeland Security investigations. What else? There's also ICE. There's the DOJ. There's the FBI. There have been a number of raids there in Maine. And there have been a series of expose videos coming out showing that the same problem we've identified in Minnesota is the same problem we've identified in Ohio. It's the same problem that's being identified in Maine. So J.D. Vance will be speaking live in Maine on Thursday. And I think he's going to be announcing that there will be a massive push there as well. All right. Now, Joe Biden also is engaging in his own push, but for a very, very different reason. You see, he is now fighting President Trump's Department of Justice as they prepare to release 70 hours of audio tapes. This would be from his conversations with his ghostwriter, the same ghostwriter where he provided him classified information that, of course, he was not authorized to hand over. We learned last week that the DOJ is preparing to release the audio conversations of these interviews, not only with Joe Biden's ghostwriter, but now, of course, also former special counsel Robert Hur. The department is now also releasing both of these in the very near future.
Joe Biden is expected to intervene, and the judge says that Joe Biden has until tomorrow to file a response. If he doesn't file that response tomorrow, it will be so ordered, and these tapes will be out. And I guarantee you we're going to have hours upon hours of entertainment. So, former resident Joe Biden intends to intervene in litigation to block the Trump administration's effort to release 70 hours of partially redacted audio recordings of interviews he conducted in 2017 with his ghostwriter who worked with Biden on his memoirs. DOJ lawyers told a federal judge in Washington this past Friday they expected Joe Biden to seek to prevent any disclosure of the audio tapes, so that Congress and the Heritage Foundation have filed Freedom of Information Acts to receive. Joe Biden, of course, did very, very bad in his conversations with Robert Hur. He was meandering. He forgot who he was. He forgot which of his children was dead. He forgot the years that his child, Beau, had passed away. Joe Biden seemed to also think at one point that perhaps he was still vice president. The list goes on and on. Joe Biden is in frail and feeble mental capacity, and I'm sure that the cancer treatments for stage 4 prostate cancer are not doing him any favors. Now, the thing about this is that, from what I understand, President Trump, as the president of the United States of America, has the power to declassify whatever the hell he wants, because that's just one of the things that comes along with being the chief executive of the United States of America. Joe Biden, I don't believe, has any legal grounds to actually block these tapes from coming out. If President Trump wants to declassify everything from the special counsel investigation, he can go ahead and do that. If he wants to declassify the conversations that Joe Biden had privately with his biographer, that'll be in the National Archives as part of the presidential records. President Trump can go ahead and do that. Of course, the problem is for Joe Biden at the time that he gave that classified information to his biographer, he wasn't actually president yet. He was not even the vice president anymore. He was a private citizen. So Joe Biden is, of course, not in a very good position. I think that they maybe have decided that they're not going to prosecute him because he's probably just going to die very soon. However, it would appear that Hunter Biden is perhaps not out of the woods. Shortly before going live today, we learned that recently released DOJ and FBI records have revealed that a number of agencies inside the federal government possessed significant evidence of potential Mann Act violations. These are prostitution violations that were, of course, committed by Hunter Biden. I think Robert Hunter Biden is his full name. And this was as early as October of 2024, on the eve of the presidential election. That would make a lot of sense because at this time, we know that the FBI and the DOJ were in possession of the Hunter Biden laptop. Now, that was from Paul Sperry, but Chuck Grassley has also just released some new information. Chuck Grassley is releasing these records showing that the Biden DOJ possessed text messages from Hunter Biden, which seem to indicate he was involved in human trafficking. That should probably surprise no one that has been listening for any length of time. But of course, Hunter Biden was never charged with a violation of the Mann Act. And of course, once Joe Biden became president and he was in charge of the government, his DOJ turned a blind eye. Chuck Grassley said earlier today, Senator Johnson and I released records today showing DOJ possessed text messages from Hunter Biden indicating potential trafficking, Mann Act violation records, support concerns we raised in September of 2020 about the Biden family report and the double standard of justice. Now, you'll probably also remember in 2023, then Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I guess just moved to Costa Rica, good for her, held up explicit photos of Hunter Biden engaging in sex acts during an IRS whistleblower hearing. Now, where is it? One of my numerous copies of the Hunter Biden laptop report from my good friends at Marco Polo. And of course, it is autographed by my friend Garrett Ziegler. Thank you again, Garrett Ziegler, for sending me multiple copies. I have one copy that's autographed and another one which is not. And, of course, the autographed one, I hold on to this. I don't actually normally flip through the pages on this one. I keep the other one for my perusal. But, of course, you know, I've got the entire Hunter Biden laptop in digital form, but it's great to have it in a paper form like this so you can go through and see for yourself all of the various violations that Hunter Biden was involved in, the drugs, the prostitutes, the human trafficking, the nasty, nasty behavior that this man was involved in. Of course, during that same hearing where Marjorie Taylor Greene held up pornographic pictures of Hunter Biden maybe getting a foot job from his niece, I don't know for certain, that was one of the claims. Two IRS whistleblowers, Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, were testifying before the House Oversight Committee on the government prosecutor's preferential treatment of Hunter Biden. And now we just get more information suggesting that they were dead on. MTG brought the receipts to that hearing. She showed Hunter Biden's criminal behavior, his activities with prostitutes, his involvement with human trafficking operations. It was also revealed that Hunter Biden was procuring women from Eastern European gangs. These were the very human trafficking operations we're talking about right now. And we can see right here, as the IRS whistleblowers were testifying, Marjorie Taylor Greene doing something good.
Mr. Shapley, you started an investigation into Hunter Biden, codenamed Sportsman, which opened in November of 2018. It was an offshoot of an investigation the IRS was conducting into a foreign-based amateur online pornography platform. This is evidence of Hunter Biden.
I still can't believe she showed this picture in Congress. I mean, it's blacked out, but it's real obvious what's going on there.
Making sex, excuse me, this is my time, making pornography.
Should we be displaying this, Mr. Chairman, in the committee?
Get a lady's time's expired and went 2.5 minutes over. If Mr. Pkwy wants the 2.5 minutes, he can have it. If he wants to yield some to Ms. Ocasio-Cortez when she goes, she can have it. We'll make it right. 2.5 minutes. You all have an extra 2.5 minutes. Chair recognizes Mr. Pkwy for 5 minutes.
Oh, man. That was a good one. That was a real good one. Oh, yeah, look at Jamie Raskin with his do-rag on. Anyways, Marjorie Taylor Greene said during the course of that hearing that Hunter Biden had paid for a plane ticket for a woman. That woman was flown in on Hunter Biden's dime, probably the taxpayer dime, for sex. Of course, she was compensated for that sex, but we don't know how much of that money actually went to her. Doesn't matter if she wanted to be there to have a transaction for the sex or not. It was human trafficking. It was a violation of the Mann Act. And she also asked the whistleblowers about the bank records, which seemed to identify Hunter Biden paying off prostitutes. And there were suspicious activity reports about Hunter Biden's buying habits that were flagged for likely being payments for human trafficking. And we don't need to see the entirety of Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments, but this is great that we're getting more information out. Now, funny enough, Hunter Biden has also moved out of the country, so I don't know whether or not he would be extradited or if there would be any possible hope of bringing him back here to face justice for anything. Perhaps it's enough that the Biden family name is mud after all of that. Who knows? We'll have to see what happens. Hold on, let me put this book back. Thank you again to Garrett Ziegler. All right, now, also just before we went live, speaking of Hunter Biden, we have news coming out of Ukraine. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, NABU, and Sapo have just brought new charges against Andrei Yermak. Now, Andrei Yermak is a close associate of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's also the former head of Zelensky's office. And according to posts on their Telegram channels, these brand new criminal charges could ensnare not only Yermak, but also Zelensky himself, because it would appear that Zelensky is powerless to stop the Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Special Prosecutor's Office from bringing charges against the people that he was previously engaging in criminal activities with. Do these people want to spend the rest of their lives in prison or a significant amount of time in prison? Or would they rather turn state's evidence against a spindly little cokehead also invested in the creation and holding of power, somebody like Volodymyr Zelensky? He's also brought the nation of Ukraine to its knees by engaging in a multi-year war with the nation of Russia. NABU and Sapo have uncovered an organized group involved in the laundering of 460 million hryvnias. That must be the Ukrainian dollar. That's about $10.5 million in luxury construction projects near Kiev. Charges have been brought against one of the group's members. That would be the former head of Volodymyr Zelensky's office, Andrei Yermak. Now, these charges involve laundering of property obtained through criminal means. This is a crime with a hefty penalty between 8 to 15 years in prison, and also all of their wealth and property would be confiscated as well. Don't forget about fugitive Timur Mindich. Of course, Timur Mindich was also charged in a similar corruption scandal, also very close confidant of Volodymyr Zelensky. Seems like everybody surrounding Zelensky is getting indicted. This was last November when NABU and Sapo launched the original sweeping operation, dubbed Operation Midas. This was aimed at exposing a significant corruption network that was in the energy sector. Central to that investigation was Timur Mindich, again, a close associate of Volodymyr Zelensky. So they charged Mindich in absentia because he fled from Ukraine. I believe he's in Israel right now. And they began releasing excerpts from over 1,000 hours of audio recordings that were captured in his apartment. They had his entire apartment bugged, and it revealed the details of his illicit schemes. You have to wonder whether or not those audio recordings taken from inside Timur Mindich's apartment exposed Volodymyr Zelensky to any criminal retribution himself. I hope so. I would love to see it happen because, of course, I think Volodymyr Zelensky is a very, very bad person. Now, good luck to you as well. Okay, now, we are going to transition back to the corruption investigations here in the United States of America. But before we do that, I do have a very quick message from our friends over here on Rumble once again. You guys, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, I want to urge you to give it a try. It is very, very good. They still have some of those starter kits available, and in those starter kits, you're going to get several types of coffee, several free goodies. You'll get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and their vitality mushroom coffee that'll give you clean energy and laser focus without the crash of traditional caffeine. No matter how you slice it, it is made from the best beans possible. They are all single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. Plus, those freebies, you're going to get their gold spoon clip, a strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. Altogether, it's $170 worth of coffee and gear, but it's yours for just $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wondering if you should actually try it. You really should. So head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. You'll get bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. You can use that QR code that you see on screen, the link in the chat. Thank you very much to Rumble. Also, thank you to Sean Joe for 3 cans. So Darla says, thanks again, Zach and Lisa, here for the best reporting. You guys always bring it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right. Now, last week, we learned that the DNI had launched an investigation into the Senate Intel Committee Democrats for the leaking of classified information. Well, that investigation has progressed from an Office of the Director of National Intelligence investigation into an FBI investigation. So the FBI has now launched their own criminal investigation into whether or not the Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee or their staff have leaked classified information to the New York Times. And this, of course, would be in an effort to damage Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. This is going all the way back to her confirmation battle. Just the News, of course, had reported that the probe centered on the National Security Agency's criminal referral that was filed last year over the disclosure of a classified overseas intercept. That intercept, of course, surfaced in the New York Times, and they suggested that Tulsi Gabbard had done something illegal. Now, sources have spoken with Just the News and confirmed that FBI Director Kash Patel moved very quickly after learning of that dormant referral, opening a criminal investigation into whether or not the Senate Intelligence Committee Democrats or their staff were improperly disclosing classified material. Now, this investigation is where it begins. And as we move just one step further out, this is a new investigation at the Pentagon into Senator Mark Kelly. But why, you might ask? Well, Senator Mark Kelly appeared on a talking head news program, and he gave up some very, very key information. First of all, on Sunday, he was very upset about President Trump's budget request of $1.5 trillion for the Defense Department. He said this amount of spending is outrageous. They need to submit a defense budget that makes sense for the moment we're in. This was on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. So this number is coming from the administration's fiscal year 2027 budget proposal. And basically, it's the starting point for negotiations with Congress for the annual spending for the year. That proposal would mark a 42% increase in defense spending from the levels we spent in 2026. When I got to the Senate 5.5 years ago, the defense budget was just over $700 billion, Kelly said. Now they're asking for twice as much money. It's nearly the amount that the rest of the world pays itself for its defense. Now, because Kelly sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee, some of the budget proposal's components pose some serious difficulties. In addition to a pay raise for troops and resupplying critical munitions, the funds would also go towards building the Golden Dome that President Trump has spoken about frequently. There's stuff in there like the Golden Dome. The physics on that stuff is really, really hard. I'm very confident we're going to spend a lot of money and we're going to get a system that doesn't work. But along with that budget request, the White House is also asking Congress for a supplemental spending package to cover the cost of the war with Iran. A Pentagon official said at a congressional hearing in late last month, the cost of the war was about $25 billion. But U.S. officials familiar with internal assessments suggested at the time that the Iran war price could be closer to $50 billion. Meanwhile, Kelly expressed concern about the state of the U.S. munitions stockpile amid this war with Iran, and this is where he gets into trouble because he cited confidential Pentagon briefings detailing the specific state of munitions. This is akin to basically going on the news and saying, we're in the middle of a war and we've run out of bullets. Our boys are still on the front line and we're going to keep fighting because you can't just give up. But he basically said out loud that we don't have any weapons left. I think it's fair to say it's shocking how deep we've gone into these magazines because this president got our country into this without a strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline. And everybody says that, but what the hell do they know? Mark Kelly is not in the room. Mark Kelly doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He said because of that, we've expended a lot of munitions, and that means the American people are less safe. He's giving an open call to anybody who might want to come attack the United States, suggesting that we are no longer in a position to protect ourselves because the administration has used what's on hand. And, of course, Mark Kelly, as part of this committee, which is going to have a hand to play in determining whether or not the government gets the money they need, he's essentially holding the administration hostage. Whether it's a conflict in the Western Pacific with China or someone else in the world, the munitions are depleted. That means anybody, anywhere, could take us on if Mark Kelly is telling the truth, and the United States would be powerless to do anything about it. So Pete Hegseth heard that, and he was not happy. Now, Mark Kelly has already been on the radar of Secretary Hegseth. He's already been demoted by Secretary Hegseth because of Mark Kelly's participation in the seditious 6 fifth column operation, where Mark Kelly and others suggested to our troops that they never should follow illegal orders without, of course, defining what an illegal order was. As far as Kelly and the others in the CIA and the intelligence community are concerned, an illegal order is just something that comes from the mouth of President Trump. So Secretary Hegseth has officially opened a Pentagon-level investigation into Mark Kelly. This would be an outright violation of his oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. These details he is alleged to have leaked came from a classified briefing on U.S. weapons stockpiles, and his placement on Face the Nation was, of course, designed to get him some points among the radical left here in the United States, pit him once again against President Trump. But he has inadvertently pitted himself against Secretary Hegseth and the Pentagon. So I believe we may have a clip of this. Yes, we do have a clip. Let's go ahead and hear this real quick.
Yes, Margaret, we have. We've been tracking it. A number of times we've been briefed by the Pentagon on specific munitions. Actually, it's been pretty detailed on Tomahawks, ATACMS, SM-3s, THAAD rounds, Patriot.
Wow. And the fact that he lists all of them, somebody's out there with a pen, right? Like somebody's paying attention, like, oh, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I want to know how many of those they have.
Patriot rounds, so those interceptor rounds to defend ourselves. And the numbers are, I think it's fair to say it's shocking, how deep we have gone into these magazines, because this president got our country into this without a strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline. And because of that, we've expended a lot of munitions. And that means the American people are less safe, whether it's a conflict in the Western Pacific with China or somewhere else in the world. The munitions are depleted. You may have seen me ask the Secretary of Defense this question about how long it's going to take to replenish. We're talking about years.
Well, Admiral Paparo, the head of U.S. Pacific Command, was recently asked in front of Congress about American readiness and whether the diversion to the Middle East was hurting it. He said he did not see any real cost on our ability to deter China.
Now, here's the thing. Just because they showed Mark Kelly a piece of paper with some numbers on it doesn't mean that they gave Mark Kelly anything at all. They very easily could have set his monkey ass up so that he would go out there on the Sunday morning talking shows and give his wholly incorrect opinion on the status and readiness of the United States military. Personally, I think it is highly implausible to believe that the United States has completely expended our military capability on, a 6 or a 7 week operation where we didn't even have any ground troops or anything like that. That just does not seem logical to me. But knowing how badly they want to get Mark Kelly, I think that it is entirely plausible to believe that they could have set him up. It wouldn't be the first time that a leaker has been set up inside the Trump administration. You give some very specific bad intel to somebody, and you see who says what. You see where it shows up. Now, you know that there were certain figures that were given to Mark Kelly, and then those very specific figures show up on CBS Face the Nation or show up in the New York Times or in the Washington Post, and they can just turn around and say, boys, we got him. We know exactly what's going on. Mark Kelly is already in hot water.
From what you have heard, when you say it's shocking, do you think that the U.S. would be able to defend, for example, Taiwan if China tries to move against it? Or are you saying we are not in a position to do that right now?
Well, it all depends on the length of a conflict. Conflict that lasts a matter of days or just weeks. I think we're well positioned to do that. If a conflict goes on for months or years, when it takes years to replenish some of these munitions, of course we're going to be in a worse posture than we otherwise would be in if this war in Iran didn't happen. And by the way, Margaret, what are the American people getting out of this? I mean, this president said he...
So considering that the United States for many, many years has been a net exporter of munitions and rockets and, you know, all sorts of things that go boom, and we've successfully been able to export those things around the world, and the United States has fought like much, much larger conflicts for an extended period of time, while at the same time sending those things overseas and keeping us and all of our property around the world safe. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So Hegseth says Captain Mark Kelly strikes again. Now he's blabbing on TV falsely and dumbly about a classified Pentagon briefing he received. Did he violate his oath again? A Department of War legal counsel will review. Get a team of JAGs on it. I think they're probably going to find this time that he actually did. And of course, now they're going to put this up against his former comments that he made during the Seditious 6 episode. And here's the other thing. Back in December of last year, Mark Kelly was already suspected of leaking a classified Pentagon Inspector General report that was aimed at making Hegseth look like he was doing a big, bad deal, that the so-called Signalgate issue had not yet been solved and that Hegseth was behind the whole thing. So I tend to see this as a trap that they set for Son of a bitch. I forgot to turn. Yep, I just figured it out, honey. All right. Let me go back. How long has my sound not been on YouTube? God, for a long time. Son of a gun. Okay. Well, sorry about that, guys. I forgot the last thing that I talked about, but we'll just start from here. Basically, President Trump has announced new fertility benefits for employers to be offered to employees, but he is also talking about slashing the federal gas tax. Now, I also said that the federal gas tax is, I believe, 18 cents per gallon. That 18 cents per gallon could make a difference to people in a cumulative way. However, it's not going to do a whole lot. There is still a big disparity between gas prices now than when President Trump came into office. So President Trump was committed to expanding access to fertility benefits so that more American families can have children, building on his longstanding efforts to support family formation and stability. And the Department of Labor is proud to have led this important initiative on behalf of the president and his administration. The decline in birth rates is a serious challenge for our nation, Robert F. Kennedy, Secretary of HHS, said. Under President Trump's leadership, this rule expands access to fertility care and gives more Americans a real path to starting and growing their families. I appreciate my colleagues at the Department of Labor and Treasury as we work together to deliver on this critical issue, RFK said. So then President Trump took some questions. Gas prices have increased since this whole BS with Iran started. Now, they're up about $1.50 a gallon since the beginning of the Iran conflict in February. President Trump was asked about the gas tax, and he said, I think it's a great idea. Yep, we're going to talk about taking the gas tax off for a period of time, and when gas goes down, we'll let it phase back in. I'm going to reduce it until, let me tell you, as soon as this war with Iran is over, as soon as it's over, you're going to see gasoline and oil drop like a stone. Let's hear from the president.
Even this bag of pre-washed spinach isn't really
the federal gas tax.
Yeah, I'm going to reduce until let me tell you, as soon as this is over with Iran, as soon as it's over, you're going to see gasoline and oil drop like a rock. Going to be dropping down like a rock. I mean, already, look, just on the basis of, things have happened. When it first came about, 20% of the oil came out of Hormuz. That's a lot. But, with time, it's like they go into Texas, they go into Louisiana, they go into Alaska, a lot of Alaska. Alaska's, sort of, it seems like very far away from Asia, but it's actually a relatively short trip by comparison to other locations they have to go to get oil. And they go into Alaska. In fact, our big problem is we're building bigger docking, to fill up.
So not only is President Trump suggesting that we're going to slash the federal gas tax, exactly 18.4 cents per gallon, it also, I guess, goes as high, to 24.5 cents per gallon on diesel. So it would be an even bigger cut on diesel, even though diesel is a hell of a lot more expensive than regular gas, although none of it is very good right now. $4.34 a gallon is the average nationwide, $5.39 a gallon for diesel nationwide. Now, what's particularly interesting about the federal gas tax is that apparently the federal gas tax was introduced in order to build the interstate highway system. Well, that interstate highway system was finalized many, many years ago. So what are we paying the gas taxes for? Now, Josh Hawley announced that he is actually introducing legislation today to completely suspend the national gas tax on top of whatever President Trump was planning on doing. But Mike Lee is suggesting that we should just get rid of it altogether. Now, I know there's going to be people in the chat, maybe some Democrats, who say, well, how will we pay for the roads? Well, you're already getting taxed at the state level to pay for the roads. And believe me, they are. If they suspended the federal gas tax and they stopped giving the federal gas tax money to the states, then the states would have to more judiciously use the funds that they have to pay for the fixing of the roads. there's all kinds of other taxes I bet you're paying to fix the roads. And if you live in a state like Michigan, you probably know that they do a piss poor job of it. In many of these states, you have the Department of Transportation out there 6 months out of the year working on the exact same roads, filling the same potholes, doing substandard repairs so that they can take that money and then use it for something else, maybe for welfare benefits or some BS. But all told, the gasoline tax should have been taken off of our bills long time ago. And so we're still paying for it, and we're essentially getting nothing for it. So I would be absolutely 100% in favor of this. Let's get rid of it. Don't need the taxes. Considering that all of these shippers are now rerouting from the Straits of Hormuz to come to the United States, to go to Alaska, or to go to the Gulf of America to pick up their oil, there's no need, I think. We are probably going to be bringing in far more money than we were in the first place. All right, now, President Trump, well, we got to talk about the stupid hantavirus. I want to be very clear. I've already talked about the hantavirus before, and I felt that I felt that what I said should have done enough to quell any potential fears that viewers in the audience might have about getting the hantavirus. The hantavirus is a very short-lived virus. It lasts outside of a mouse or a rodent for like maybe 2 to 3 days. So it's not like a rat or a mouse is going to scurry across your dresser and then a month later you're going to come by and touch it and you're going to get the hantavirus. You have to be living in proximity with rodents in order to get the hantavirus. And they've got to be actively infected with it. So the people on that cruise ship who tested positive for the hantavirus were more than likely living on a cruise ship that was infected with rodents, okay? This guy that went to the dump, we'll talk about him in a minute, and supposedly brought back the hantavirus, I don't believe it. I think that these people on this ship were probably in close proximity to rodents for an extended period of time. Now, the World Health Organization is essentially telling the entire world that the hantavirus is the next big pandemic, big surprise, because it's an election year in the United States, and that they're going to shut everything down. They're going to do everything they did before because they were so successful when it came to the original pandemic of the coronavirus. However, a very important thing to remember is that the United States of America is no longer part of the World Health Organization, guys. So we're not going to go on a lockdown. We're not going to be in a similar position to what we were before. There's not going to be maybe 2 weeks to stop the spread. The hantavirus is not going to tear through the United States of America. You don't have anything to worry about. If you have pests that live in your home, call an exterminator, okay? Just call an exterminator and then go stay at a freaking Sheraton for 48 hours, and you're going to be okay. Now, President Trump was asked over the weekend about whether or not the United States would consider rejoining the World Health Organization. Now, I think that this is part of the PSYOP. They want to scare the people of the United States and perhaps the government of the United States into thinking that we must rejoin the WHO. Oh, we're just simply not capable enough. We don't have the intelligence to figure out how to deal with the hantavirus. That's absolutely not the case. Here, President Trump says, no, we are not rejoining the WHO. We got this shit.
I'd like to see a big extension. Okay?
Will your team travel to Moscow, Mr. President? Will you consider leaving the World Health Organization because of the outbreak of hantavirus?
No, we seem to have things under very good control. They know that virus very well. It's been around a long time. Not easily transferable, unlike COVID. But we'll see. We're studying it very closely. We have very good people studying it very closely. I'd like to.
So, the hantavirus is not new. This is a little-known disease because it's not often contracted. Because most people don't live in infected hovel, okay? People are not generally living in a dump with rats and mice climbing all over their faces, okay? And even the people who do, most of these mice and most of the rats, they don't have the hantavirus. So There's nothing new about it. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's well understood. It's treatable. It doesn't spread easily between humans. And the fact that you're seeing so much attention paid to it by the same players that push the pandemic, that gives you all the information you need. None of you watching this program should be afraid of contracting the hantavirus. And that's even on top of the fact that they just transferred people with the hantavirus here to the United States. Why? Because they're citizens of the United States. They're going in to quarantine, and I have video of them arriving. But I want to make sure everybody here understands that I ain't fear-mongering, and I'm trying to give you every piece of information that you could possibly get to make sure that you don't freak out thinking that you might have the hantavirus. All right? Now, President Trump was also asked earlier today whether or not he feels like he made the wrong decision in pulling out of the World Health Organization. No, I'm Donald Mother effing Trump. I don't regret anything.
What do you think about the handling of the hantavirus by the U.S.?
I think fine.
Do you regret withdrawing from the WHO? Given that
No, I'm glad. So we were paying the World Health Organization $500 million a year. Look, it's a lot of money, but in the overall scope, it's not that much, but it's a lot of money. And we weren't being treated well, and they were making the wrong diagnoses. I was the one that said it came from Wuhan. They didn't say that. They refused to say that because they were totally owned by China. So I was saying it came from Wuhan. They didn't want to say that. Now it's turned out, I think it's been conclusive that it came from Wuhan. But I said that on the first day because I saw satellite pictures with body bags all over Wuhan, literally all over Wuhan. So I said that they lied to me or they didn't know. So we were paying for, let's say, 350 million people. We were paying $500 million a year to the World Health Organization. That's a lot of money. What the hell are they going to do with that kind of money? And China was paying $39 million a year for 1.4 billion people. So I said, you know, you got your story wrong because we should be paying about $10 million, not $500 million. And they were willing to negotiate, but it was so popular when I pulled out. They gave us all wrong information. On COVID, they were totally wrong. And I looked today and I saw the same doctor that was there. He's a good politician. I don't know how the hell he kept his job, but he was there telling us about this. Now, the one thing with this one is that it's much harder to catch. And we've had it for a long, it's been around for a long time. People are very familiar with it. So, you know.
So part of me thinks that Gene Hackman and his wife last year dying from the hantavirus, it makes me wonder if they didn't think, you know what we're going to do? We're going to plant the seed here in the United States. We're going to give somebody with a high profile, an elderly individual who is probably going to die anyways. We're going to give him the hantavirus. And then it'll be in people's minds. So then when we begin the process of rolling out this operation, people were, oh my God, hantavirus. I remember hantavirus. That's what happened to Gene Hackman and his wife. Oh my God, if it can happen to Gene Hackman, it can happen to me.
I hope it's fine. All I can do is everything that a president can do, which is actually somewhat limited. But it seems like it is not easy to spread. In fact, it's in certain ways very hard to spread. It's been we've lived with it for years, many years, and we think we're in very good shape. We're very careful, and Nebraska has done a fantastic job. They have a place there that those doctors are unbelievable. The job they've done.
All right, so they've been pumping this hantavirus news for the last week. Patient zero was this guy, a Dutch bird watcher. Now, I didn't realize this, and it might answer the question that I had last week. You know, why if we've got all these people on this cruise ship that are stuck and they can't land anywhere because they're too worried about bringing the hantavirus with them, why is it that nobody's posting? You just have this guy posting about the hantavirus, one post, basically. And it turns out this was like an expedition. This wasn't just a cruise. This was like some type of scientific expedition. So this guy, he goes to this dump in Argentina. He is allegedly patient zero. We don't know, right? I mean, if people on the ship started getting hantavirus, this guy was probably confined to his quarters or maybe the med lab or something like that. So considering how unlikely it is to transmit the hantavirus from casual contact, I tend to believe, again, that the mice on the ship were the source of the hantavirus. Maybe the mice from the dump got onto the ship and they gave it to the other mice. Who knows? Anyways, this guy died. His wife died. They were more than likely in the same room together. And they went to this dump and then they came back, and that's where they're saying that, you know, this is where it came from. So I don't know. I don't believe anything these people say. The World Health Organization is a propaganda organization anyways. They want that $500 million back from the United States. So the 140 passengers that were on this ship, they were unable to dock anywhere. Now they are starting to disembark. First, they went to the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands, very remote, okay? And 3 people on the ship, those 2 people that I mentioned, and then somebody else, have allegedly died. Really don't know much about them at all. Again, I don't think it's a big deal. The environmental exposure that is necessary is the rodent urine and feces. Again, if you live in a clean environment, there aren't rats and mice running all over the place, pooping and peeing in your Rice Krispies, and then you're eating them, you're going to be fine. And the contractability of the stuff is not very easy. It's not like the common cold. So they had this 1 case of hantavirus infection that was laboratory confirmed, and all of the other cases were merely suspected. So they have 6 suspected affected individuals. Now, the 2 people, the 2 people who arrived here in the United States, again, they were actual U.S. citizens. And the one that they have confirmed initially only tested mildly positive for the hantavirus. But 17 of the people on this ship were Americans. And the 1 U.S. passenger who tested mildly positive does have this Andy strain, which, again, is more transmissible human to human, part of the PSYOP, in my opinion. But, you know, he's only showing mild symptoms. He's not sick. He's not dying. And the people who are coming back to the United States were in biocontainment units. And they were supposed to be evaluated at the specialized facility in Nebraska, which is the facility that President Trump had mentioned. But, of course, the Centers for Disease Control is in Atlanta. And right here, we have a couple of people disembarking from this ambulance. And you've got the medics that are wearing full biocontainment gear. The patients themselves also step out. They're also in full biocontainment gear. All right. And it looks like this guy right here must be one of the patients, because he gets into this this chair, and his suit is a lot more, you know, it's covering everything. But he's like giving thumbs up, you know. I mean, he could have walked, but I think they want the maximum impact of showing this guy being wheeled in. So here he goes. He's going inside. No big deal. He's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Nobody needs to worry about getting the hantavirus. Please, you guys, don't freak out. Don't lose sleep over this stuff. All right. All right, now let me say thank you to Unicorn77. The Arcadia, California mayor story may be a fun one for you. So I actually talked about this story when this woman was initially indicted, but the now former mayor of Arcadia, California, and perfect timing because we are transitioning to a little segment on California, Ilhan Wang, who looks to be heavily airbrushed and plastic surgery enhanced in this image right here. She has now pled guilty to acting as a foreign agent for China. That's right. She was a spy for the Chinese Communist Party. And this was, of course, while she was the actual mayor of Arcadia. She's 58 years old. She was charged April 1st in LA federal court, and the paperwork and everything along with it was sealed until today. Now that it's been unsealed, according to the plea agreement, she admitted to working to promote the interests of the People's Republic of China between 2020 and 2022. She was promoting pro-PRC propaganda in the United States in conjunction with her then fiance, Yaoning Mike's son. That was her campaign advisor. And at the direction of the People's Republic of China and their government officials, they coordinated with others to promote the PRC's interests, orchestrating a team to help elect Wang to the Arcadia City Council. She was elected in November of 2022. Now, Sun, who's 65, lives in Chino Hills. He's currently serving a 4-year federal prison sentence. He also pled guilty in October of 2025 to acting as an illegal agent of a foreign government. So Wang and Sun worked together to operate U.S. News Center. This is a website that purported to be a news source for local Chinese American community members. And they received and executed directives directly from the People's Republic of China. Government officials were telling them to post pro-PRC content on their website. Wang said in her plea agreement that she did not notify the Attorney General that she was acting in the United States as an agent of the PRC. She was located in the United States when she engaged in these acts knowingly, and she did not disclose on her website that some of the content was being posted at the direction of members of this foreign government. In announcing the case initially against Wang, the first assistant U.S. attorney, Bill Asaley, our boy in L.A., said that in our country, those who covertly do the bidding of foreign governments undermine democracy. This plea agreement is the latest success in our determination to defend the homeland against China's efforts to corrupt our U.S. institutions. Wang was scheduled to make an appearance earlier today in district court, and of course, she will be pleading guilty publicly very, very soon. Justine Bruno, who is the deputy city manager of Arcadia, has confirmed Wang's resignation from the city council. The allegations at the center of this case that a foreign government sought to exert influence over a local elected official are deeply troubling, and we take them seriously. We want to be clear. This investigation concerns individuals' conduct, and the charges are for the conduct that ceased after Ms. Wang was sworn in December of 2022. Now, they may not have caught her doing anything overt while she was mayor, but that doesn't mean that she wasn't doing anything. For whatever reason, they only decided to charge her between 2020 and 2022. I am positive that a superseding indictment could come at any time, but I can't imagine that the People's Republic of China would have not only used Miss Wang and her fiance to publish pro-PRC propaganda on their website and then conspire to get her elected as the mayor if they did not have plans for her to be something more in the future. As a Democrat, and then a Democrat mayor, she could easily have parlayed that position to a higher office within California state government. She could have been a sleeper agent for many years, not receiving any overt directives from the People's Republic of China, just kind of waiting in the wings for them to say, okay, now that you've reached this particular level of power, we're going to have you do A, B, or C. So the Arcadia City Council is going to be selecting a new mayor and mayor pro tem from among the remaining members of the city council, and they will be the leader of the town until the next election cycle, which will be in November. Now, Gavin Newsom has a brand new scam that he is bringing to the taxpayers of California. Before I say that, though, let me say welcome to BDR1776. He says, I made it to Florida on Saturday, and you can thank me for bringing the rain. I can't wait to check out the places to eat. Let me know where you go, because there's a lot of good spots. Curtis Good says, Zach, in my time working here in Wixom, Michigan, I concur with your statement about the poor roads. Yes, everybody from Michigan knows just how shitty the roads are. 365 days a year, there is something going on. BDR also says, I'll be planting new plants half the time I'm here and seeing they all died. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, unfortunately, we've hardly had any rain. Normally, you can plant stuff here in Florida just
walk away and they're going to take care of themselves. But yeah, that's just been so dry. Light Ray, good to see you. She says we need to plaster memes to humiliate people so stupid to wear a mask and fall for this again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That was me adding to that. But yes, Light Ray, I concur. PJ Carr 17 says maybe because they aren't getting kickbacks in this war. That could be it. Thick Ray says, I'm not sure if everything's cool on your end, but on your YouTube channel, you're muted, and I'm on Pilled, the #1 channel. Hashtag the truth is loose. Yes, thank you. It was definitely only on YouTube that I was muted. It's been out for at least 12 minutes. Oh, shit, that's awful. Best you can say 17 minutes. That's what it's. That's what I like about you, Pilled. Hashtag the truth is loose. Yeah, sorry about that. I have to mute myself for YouTube when I play a video, and I hit the button, but it didn't unmute, and I was just so in the groove. Unfortunately, YouTube, you guys missed out on a whole bunch of gold. So, okay, now, Gavin Newsom has a new scheme, and that scheme is all about providing diapers for pregnant women and babies in the state of California. It sounds like a noble gesture, but unfortunately, this is directly connected to the enrichment of Gavin Newsom and Gavin Newsom's wife. Now, this new project is going to give new parents free diapers. It sounds great. I mean, who couldn't use free diapers? Anybody who has a baby, know you go through diapers like nobody's business. So California families welcoming newborns will soon receive hundreds of free diapers before they leave the hospital under a first-in-the-nation program that was announced this past weekend by Governor Gavin Newsom. During the program's first year, it'll be offered to about 65 to 75 hospitals that handle a quarter of the births in the state and largely serve low-income parents. Now, this initiative will end up expanding to more hospitals statewide, and the governor's office has not said exactly how many yet, but the hospitals are going to be partnering with the state and a nonprofit called Baby to Baby to manufacture the diapers under the label Golden State Start. And the state has set aside $7.4 million from last year's budget so they can roll out this initiative. And this year's budget proposal includes an additional $12.5 million to implement the program for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins in June of 2027. Again, it sounds like a great idea. Who couldn't use free diapers? However, like I said, Gavin Newsom's wife is involved, and this wouldn't be the first time Gavin Newsom's wife would be accused of siphoning state money into her nonprofit so that she can enrich herself. So this shiny new taxpayer-funded program of free diapers is planning to offer nearly $20 million in state funds to manufacture them. And the CEO of Baby to Baby is Nora Weinstein. And Nora Weinstein sits on the board of Gavin Newsom's wife's project, the California Partners Project. Let's hear from Gavin. I'd just like to see exactly how he posits this to the people.
I was so inspired when I was reading about these two remarkable people you see behind me, Kelly and Nora, and all these exciting things they were doing in Southern California, not just within the region, but in our state, to create a state of mind and a quality imagination about a new pathway, a new approach to the issue of affordability.
Well, the only problem is that although the people getting the diapers won't have to pay for them, somebody is going to have to pay for those diapers. And the people paying for the diapers are going to be the people in California paying the taxes. And you would be a fool if you thought that all of the money being set aside for those diapers are going to go for the production of the diapers. Now, we also don't have any examples of the diapers themselves, so we really can't say what the quality of those diapers are. But these millions of dollars that are going to pay for these diapers means that the per diaper cost are going to be much, much more than the cost of a diaper that you would just get at the grocery store or Walmart or Sam's Club or wherever it is. I always went to Sam's Club because I could buy diapers in bulk and I could get them the cheapest that way. Eventually, what we're really talking about here is Gavin Newsom funneling taxpayer-funded money
into the pockets of someone who's directly connected to his wife in a financial way.
So Gavin Newsom's California just announced that they're going to be providing free diapers for newborns across the state. Sounds great, right? Wait a minute, because this is how they get you. Newsom says the Golden State Start program will give families 400 diapers when they leave the hospital with their newborn. And of course, leftists are using this to claim that Newsom and Democrats are more pro-family and pro-life than Republicans. Except, here's the thing. At 10 diapers a day, 400 diapers will get a family with a newborn through about 5 weeks. The program is going to cost the state upwards of $12.5 million next year alone, up from $7 million this year. So I'll let you do the future math. That money is going to be funneled through a nonprofit called Baby to Baby, which will then hand out their branded diapers to 400 participating hospitals. California has about 500 plus hospitals, give or take. Oh, and did I mention that Baby to Baby's CEO, Nora Weinstein, is really good friends with Gavin Newsom's wife and even sits on the board of her California Partners Project? Baby to Baby's board is also stocked up with Hollywood celebrities, including Miranda Kerr, Ciara, Julie Bowen, Kelly Rowland, and Jessica Alba.
I don't know any of those people. I know who Jessica Alba is, but I never heard any of those other chicks.
Most of whom donated to Gavin Newsom's campaign. So instead of lowering taxes and letting families keep their own money so that they can go buy things like diapers, California takes their money, pumps it through a nonprofit that's stocked with Gavin Newsom's political buddies and campaign donors, whose CEO made $240,000 in 2024. All to provide a free service that's available only in select locations. So that cash then lines the pockets of the people at the top. California taxpayers end up paying through the nose to the tune of millions of dollars for overpriced diapers, and Democrats call it compassion and use it to solicit more votes for people who are too ignorant to recognize this Ponzi scheme.
More votes, more money, more cash directly into the pockets of those sitting on the boards. Now, I had seen some figures on the price, the per diaper price. And effectively, this means that if a family had just been given a gift card, they would be able to buy, maybe roughly 50% more diapers on their own recognizance if they went and got diapers themselves rather than having the diapers given to them as they leave the hospital. And again, that taxpayer-funded program is going to come out of the pockets of the people in California who are paying the taxes. And it is inevitably going to end up giving salaries to all of those people that were named, who also then give money to Gavin Newsom's campaign. The incestuous nature of the non-governmental organization industrial complex, the nonprofit industrial complex, is so vicious and so transparent at this point. Now, we also need to talk about Eric Swalwell because, as we mentioned last week, Eric Swalwell has not stopped sending messages to the women who have accused him of sexual improprieties. He is still sending messages to those same young sexual assault victims using his Snapchat account. The San Francisco Chronicle has recently published a story about one of these women who claimed that Eric Swalwell sexually assaulted her twice. She worked as a staffer in Eric's office for 2 years, and she said that Swalwell began pursuing her just weeks after she was hired at the tender age of 21 back in 2019. Now, after the publishing of this report, 3 additional women, of course, spoke to CNN and provided evidence about the alleged additional misconduct that the now former California congressman was engaging in. You would think a normal person would walk away from the situation, cut their losses, and say, I'm in deep enough. I don't need to dig the hole any deeper. But this is Eric Swalwell we're talking about. We're not talking about your average intelligent male who might know when he's gone too far. Eric Swalwell sexually assaults people in 2019 and then again rapes a girl in 2024 after she has left his employment, and then thinks after he's been called out that the best thing he could do would be to message her again on Snapchat and threaten her
for coming forward and talking about the whistleblowing. Remember, she woke up and said that she could tell that some sexual activity had happened, no memory of what went on. But in this new report, Eric Swalwell is sending midnight Snapchats to his young victims, asking them why they are screenshotting his messages. If you had to guess, I would say Eric Swalwell probably has got a lot of time on his hands. He's probably spending some late nights drinking, staring at his Snapchat reels and looking at pictures of these young women that he was able to connive out of them, maybe looking at his own dick pics, pardon my language, and feeling just a little bit betrayed. So according to CNN, the night after they spoke with Eric Swalwell's attorney about their reporting, Eric Swalwell started sending these late-night drunken Snapchats to some of the very women that were in this report. And remember, not all of these women publicly identified themselves. It's incriminating when somebody comes forward anonymously to accuse a man of rape, and then that man, apropos of that identity, knows who to send a threatening message to. That is incriminating as all get out. At 1:57 a.m., Eric Swalwell goes into his Snapchat and starts messaging these women, asking why they had screenshotted his chats, including screen caps of text messages between the two of them. CNN also says that he sent similar messages to another woman who received that text and said, "My whole chest got tight," and then she immediately started crying, because Eric Swalwell had sexually assaulted her and then came careening back into her life. Eric Swalwell appears to be a very, very stupid person. This man is facing up to 40 years in prison, my friends. He has got open sexual assault investigations against him, I believe, in New York, in California, in the District of Columbia, and who knows how many other places Eric Swalwell visited and drugged women, giving them the Bill Cosby treatment before taking them back to his hotel room and having his way with them. If Eric Swalwell sends you a text message and you don't remember the last time you saw him, you might be a rape victim. All right. Now, we also have an update for you on the case of a 22-year-old they, them, maybe a woman, but she looks like a they, them to me. She is now being indicted for the attempted arson of a Texas Republican Party headquarters. Like a total intelligent person, just like Eric Swalwell, she left a note, handwritten in crayon, it would appear, where she wrote FDJT and F ICE. Now, this woman is 22 years old, and this federal indictment for attempting to burn down the Comal County Republican Party headquarters is probably going to put her in prison for a long, long time. Her name is Grace Carol Brown, and she broke a window at the building on Landa Street on January 14th. She threw a backpack containing ethanol, gasoline, a lighter, and matches inside the building. She attempted to climb through the broken window, and when that failed, she lit a rolled-up magazine on fire and she tossed it inside the building. She didn't do a very good job, but a small fire did cause minor damage. No one was injured. There wasn't a lot of property damage, and employees discovered the damage when they arrived for work that next morning. Now, when investigators found this note on the scene, where Brown allegedly expressed extreme hostility towards the Republican Party, ICE, and federal officials, one of the first things they did was test it, I'm certain, for DNA and fingerprints. Court documents and multiple reports describe that note as saying, "I burned down the Nazi Party of Nebraska's, or of NB's office. FDJT, F ICE, liberty or die." And then she wrote additional writings inside of her backpack where she called Republican officials enemies of the U.S. Constitution. Now let's take a look at the actual press release from the Department of Justice. Come on. Okay. New Braunfels woman. Oh, New Braunfels. This is where the Biden Department of Justice went after those people from the Trump train. I remember I interviewed the husband and the wife Anyways, this is in San Antonio. The federal grand jury in San Antonio returned an indictment charging a New Braunfels woman with actual and attempted malicious damage by fire to property involved in interstate or foreign commerce. Now, according to the court documents, Grace Carol Brown attempted to set the New Braunfels building that houses the Comal County Republican Party headquarters and 2 other commercial businesses. Brown broke a window, threw the backpack inside, unsuccessful to climb through, set that magazine on fire, threw it in, and it didn't burn down, but there was minor damage. Brown was arrested on January 22nd. I'm sure that they just looked at pictures of locals and said, we might want to question that woman. She was charged with burglary of a building and arson. She's now facing these federal charges as well as the state charges, and if convicted, she faces 20 years, 5 to 20 years in a federal prison. A federal district court judge will determine any sentence after considering U.S. sentencing guidelines and, of course, a trial before a jury of her peers. Again, just take a look at that woman, and anybody could tell you that she was probably the one who set that building on fire. Grace Carol Brown. Good Lord. Her bond was set at $200,000. And the building she attacked also houses those 2 other commercial businesses. There was a storage company and a used car dealer, which makes the federal charge applicable because the property is used in interstate commerce. I bet she never considered that that might be the case. She is still in custody, and she has not yet entered a plea on the federal charges. She also faces additional state-level felony charges in Comal County, including terrorism charges, arson, and burglary. Sorry, Grace, we barely knew you. Surter says, free diapers, Biden and Nadler will be at the front of the line. All right. Now, tragic announcement here. The remains of a missing U.S. soldier who disappeared earlier this month during Operation African Lion. This was during a training exercise in Morocco, has now been recovered. Lamont Key Jr. and another U.S. service member actually went missing at the start of the month on May 2nd. They still have not identified or recovered the body of the other service member, but a Moroccan military search team found this soldier in the water along the shoreline at approximately 8:55 a.m. local time on May 9th. They were roughly 1 mile south of where the soldiers reportedly went into the ocean. Allegedly, the 2 U.S. soldiers were off duty when they went missing while they were on a hike. I guess they fell off a cliff and they fell into the Atlantic Ocean. Moroccan and French forces assisted the U.S. in the search for the missing service members. The search for the 2 U.S. soldiers has covered more than 4,600 square miles of sea and coastal area. And the body of this American service member was found and recovered and announced on Sunday. Let's see. We do have a picture of him. Well, I know that they released a picture, but apparently it's not in this report. One moment. Here he is right here. This would be Kendrick Lamont Key Jr. So tragic circumstances. Don't know the identity of the next missing service member, but apparently there are roughly 1,000 Moroccan military and civilian personnel who assisted in the recovery of the body. And don't know what the circumstances are for them falling off the cliff. Maybe when we learn some more about the exercise, but I mean, look at this. The operation is in the middle of the desert, so they must have gone some ways to be able to reach the ocean. Very, very sad stuff. So definitely keep his family in your prayers. All right. Now, we also have a case of illegal aliens trying to make their way into the United States on a Union Pacific boxcar. But They were unsuccessful, and their bodies have been found inside the car. Now, according to the Laredo Police Department, an employee with the Union Pacific Railroad discovered at least 6 dead bodies in the train car. This is likely due to the heat that was in the upper 90s in Laredo, Texas. So, considering that this is one of the largest ports of entry in the United States, it sounds as if these illegal aliens attempted to hitch a ride on the boxcar, and because of just how hot it was, they didn't make it. So they discovered these people around 4:04 p.m., and at 5:37 p.m., they confirmed that they were dead. Don't do it, guys. If that's what you're planning on doing, there's no need to come into the United States illegally in a dangerous and reckless fashion. All right, man, I can't tell you how many stories I've had come across the wires about female high school teachers who are getting busted sleeping with students. But this woman in Georgia allegedly had sex with a student inside of a broom closet. She's a 24-year-old female teacher at Alexandria High School in Douglas County. Her name is Maris Nichols, and she's been arrested for assaulting one of her students. She's a biology teacher, and she's the director of the football program. She was taken into custody last Thursday, and she's been charged with 2 felony counts of sexual assault by a person in a position of supervisory or disciplinary authority. Now, according to the arrest warrants, Nichols allegedly had intercourse with the underage student on at least 2 separate occasions, once on April 23rd inside of a school closet, and then again on May 2nd inside a Hummer parked at the end of a driveway. There's a joke there, but I'm not going to tell it. Deputies arrested Maris, and she was given a $40,000 bond. I don't know why you would go and do something stupid like this, whether you're a man or a woman. Don't have sex with your students. But if you're a woman, don't have sex with your students and think that you're going to get away with it, because the boys are going to tell everyone that they know what happened. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine the mindset of a person who would think that this would be something that, is okay, or that you're going to get away with it. Disgusting behavior, and I'm glad this woman got caught. Hopefully she hasn't abused any other kids, because this is going to mess his whole life up. Absolutely awful. All right, now this is another one that is going to get you. A biological male convicted of human trafficking his own 7-year-old daughter across the country, also repeatedly sexually assaulting his own 7-year-old daughter, but even worse, filming the abuse and then distributing child sexual abuse material from that abuse, is now in prison. That's the good news, in New Jersey, but it's in a women's prison. And his trans boyfriend, a man pretending to be a woman, is, I guess, in prison with him. And I guess that they produced child sexual abuse material at a professional trans porn studio. I don't know why more people aren't in prison after the way this went down, but Matthew Voles is the man in question. He goes by Marina Voles, and the reason he is being talked about is because he is demanding a taxpayer-funded settlement. He wants to be able to perform nude outdoor Wiccan rituals and to marry his male co-defendant while behind bars. There's all kinds of things wrong with this story. Matthew, good news, is serving a 25-year sentence. He is ineligible for parole during that 25 years because of the depravity and the nature of his crimes. He pled guilty back in November of 2021 to the multiple first-degree charges, which included the human trafficking, the aggravated assault, the conspiracy to commit human trafficking, and aggravated sexual assault, and endangering the welfare of a child through the creation of this child sexual abuse material. And the crimes that were committed by Mr. Voles and his boyfriend are as horrific as they can possibly get. In December of 2018, Voles traveled to Oregon with his co-defendant, Matthew Romero. He goes by the name Ashley Romero. They took custody of his biological daughter from her mother, who was a drug addict. They took their child, his child, back to Franklin Township, New Jersey. There in Franklin Township, New Jersey, they operated what prosecutors described as a family-owned transgender pornography production studio specializing in amateur BDSM and taboo fetish content. Voles and Romero assaulted Matthew's daughter, both individually and together, and then they filmed it so that they could sell it to other sick individuals. Now, the child was tortured. They forced her to wear collars. They made her live in a cage in a basement. They used implements on her without getting too specific. And some of the media that was found by police featured Mr. Romero abusing this girl with another man. So Romero lives in the residence with Voles and two other individuals, a guy by the name of Sean Allen, who was also on film abusing the child, and Dulcinea Gnecco, who acted as a domestic assistant. So the two other men in the home were also convicted for their roles in the abuse of the child. Sean Allen, 54, was given a 12-year sentence. Dulcinea Gnecco was also charged on 4 counts of child endangerment and got a 5-year sentence. The judge who sentenced Matthew back in 2022 called the case a vortex of darkness and told the court that the child was taken from her mother solely for the sexual gratification of others. If this was not heinous, cruel, and depraved, I don't know what is. Now, Voles was initially housed at Southwoods State Prison. That's a men's facility. But 2 months later, he was transferred to Edna Mayhem Correctional Facility for Women, and he remains there today. State records listed him as male until 2023, when New Jersey Department of Corrections updated his profile, and suddenly he was a woman. Ashley Romero, also identifying as a woman, gets to live with him there at Edna Mayhem. So in these previous coverages of this horrific case, Voles and Romero are both referred to as women, even though they're men. They demand to be referred to by she, her pronouns, and they have been referred to as the girl's mother by international media publications like the Daily Mail. And Voles had previously served as the Clark College Queer Assistant President prior to his transition, just 1 year before he and his boyfriend began abusing the child. So where the lawsuit comes in 2023, Voles files a lawsuit in Hunterdon County Superior Court against the New Jersey Department of Corrections, alleging religious discrimination because he is a Wiccan. Voles alleged that Joy Lynch, who was the head of religious services at Edna Mayhem, denied the prison's Wiccan population, of which Voles claims to be a part of, basic accommodations such as a loosely fitting cloak for a witch coven gathering, the right to maintain a witch's garden for growing sacred herbs, and permission to conduct nighttime rituals either nude or wearing a cloak. Instead of being laughed at and given extra time, the case is now moved into settlement negotiations. So if you're a resident of the state of New Jersey, you may be on the hook for part of this pervert's settlement that he is going to receive, likely because the state of New Jersey is totally out of whack. Voles has submitted 12 specific demands to the New Jersey Department of Corrections, and among those demands are the right to perform outdoor Wiccan ceremonies in the nude during certain religious observances and the ability to be officially designated as a Wiccan religious leader inside the prison. Voles is also demanding permission to marry his boyfriend and co-defendant. I don't think they should be anywhere near each other. Part of their punishment should be that they are forced to both live in different men's prisons on different parts of the country, and they should be in Gen Pop so that the prison population is fully aware of what their crimes are, and they can dispense a little bit of prison justice. Now, the New Jersey Department of Corrections already has a policy permitting Wiccan practices, and they already allow inmates access to items like the Book of Shadows a pentacle, incense, electric candles, and grape juice as a wine substitute. Volz, back in 2017, was, again, the president of the Queer Association at Clark College in Washington State. And he had previously sued the Somerset County Sheriff's Office over the alleged gender identity discrimination. And he got a settlement of $5,000 for that. But this is just the latest in a string of controversies surrounding male inmates identifying as women and then also being housed in women's prisons. But apparently it's happened before at Edna Mahan. And taxpayers should know exactly what they are funding. And essentially, they are funding the continued perversions of these sick pedophiles. So again, this guy is a child pornographer. He is about to get everything that he wants from the state of New Jersey so that they don't appear to be transphobic or discriminating against his made-up religion. And he is also going to get to live with his boyfriend for the rest of his life. And that's just not something I think anybody should be okay with. All right. Now, I saved all the worst stuff for last, you guys. A 16-year-old girl, an innocent 16-year-old girl from Long Island was just sexually assaulted. The assaulter filmed it, and it turns out he's an Uber driver. Now, he also got a job as an Uber driver without having to show any identification. And he also then delivered her into the hands of another sexual assaulter, a repeat offender, who just got out of a prison sentence. They gave him this lenient sentence, and it's because he was under 27 years old. This attack took place in Bushwick in March. I guess the victim had been communicating with the rapist, Ralphie Figueroa. They were speaking on Snapchat. Figueroa paid her $35 for a nude photo, which she sent a fake picture from the internet and then later used threats to lure her into meeting him. Figueroa did. And I guess, he knew she was under the age of 18. On the day of the assault, Figueroa threatened her on Snapchat and said, "You have to come because I know your address and I can confirm your address because if you don't, I'm going to hurt you and your family." Well, then he used her confirming her address out of fear of getting her family hurt to send an Uber to her home. And the driver never asked for her identification. This is a clear violation of Uber's own policies when you pick up people who are under the age of 18. She met Figueroa, who then forced her into his car. He assaulted her. And the criminal complaint details a whole bunch of things that he forced her to do. But Mr. Figueroa was let out because of this lenient prison program. And he had been a repeat offender prior to this rape. He has, however, pled not guilty, and he's being held on Rikers Island on $100,000 bail. The victim's family has also filed a lawsuit against Uber because the driver had a responsibility to make sure that this girl was over the age of 18 and that she wasn't going to be delivered into the hands of a rapist. Now, the girl did not understand the dangers of the situation. Why would she? She's under the age of 18. She doesn't know these things. She isn't required to know these things because she's a child. My daughter told me that if the videos of the assault were to be made public, she would also kill herself, because that's what this guy did. He raped her, filmed it, and then said, basically, if you tell anybody, I'm going to put this out there. So it's incredibly distressing for the family and for this young woman. But this is the dangers of living in a modern state that is being run by Democrat crazy people. Now, you don't have to worry about that in Tennessee. All of these crimes I just spoke to you about, in my opinion, should be capital crimes. Some of them are in certain places, but in Mississippi, this is a place where they don't think twice about putting you to death. This is where they have recently made firing squads legal again. At the state level, they will go ahead and put you to death. They put this billboard up. This is for people coming into Mississippi from Tennessee. And the billboard, as you can see, it says, "Welcome to Mississippi, where the firing squad is legal. Think twice. Think twice." This is on I-55, and it's part of the aggressive public campaign to deter additional violence that might come in from the state of Tennessee. Now, you previously in Tennessee, if you committed a capital offense, you would only have been put to death by lethal injection. But now they're just going to shoot you with a line of people who are probably very excited about doing it. They do have electrocution as well as nitrogen hypoxia, which is basically just helping you suffocate with nitrogen. Now, the owner of this billboard is a district attorney, and he has said that we just want to deter people. This is in DeSoto County. We're going to be loud and clear that DeSoto County does not coddle violent criminals. If you bring violence across our state line, we are going to prosecute you aggressively and hold you accountable. People on death row are the losers of life's lottery. If violent criminals are looking for a state that coddles crime, Mississippi is not it. They better think twice before they act here. Safety is achieved through enforcement, and safe communities do not happen by accident. They happen because law enforcement officers, prosecutors, judges, and citizens refuse to surrender their communities to violent criminals. Now, previously, the same district attorney had put up signs that said, "Turn back now." Basically, again, giving a warning to anybody from Tennessee that might think they can come in and commit some crimes. BDR says, I know you get a lot of messages, so I won't hold it against you. I asked last week where I could go out to eat from the tourists in Daytona. I wrote them down. I'll be checking them out next week. Awesome, dude. Cool, man. Yeah, give it a shot. All right. Now, no more thank yous over there on Pilled, and that was the final donation over on Rumble. And I do have one more message from our friends over on Rumble, and then I've got a couple of them that I need to get to from Ko-Fi from last week. All right, you guys, as you know, America is coming up on a big anniversary, 250 years of this country existing, our 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen, which means it's the perfect opportunity to help your kids understand why this country matters and, most importantly, understand the story behind it. So there is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's a great way to teach your kids about how this country began, who the founding fathers were, what it was they were risking, why the ideas they fought for still matter today. This guide is going to send them back to that moment they signed the Declaration of Independence, and when they did it, they knew exactly what they were risking. They were putting their lives on the line for freedom. It's going to break it all down in a way that makes it very simple to understand and enjoy. It's not going to water it down or make it feel like schoolwork. So if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, then this is something that you're going to want to grab. The best part is it's completely free with this special offer. All you do is pay the $2 for shipping and handling. And to pick this up, you just use that QR code on screen or head directly to freeusabirthday.com, freeusabirthday.com, and you can pick up the Kid's Guide to America's 250th birthday for your kids today, because America's story matters, and make sure that the next generation knows it. Thank you very much to them, and thank you to Rumble. All right, so I had a couple of donations that came in on Ko-Fi, and for some reason, the notifications did not come through my screen. Okay, so let me pull these up. Why is it not opening? Okay, there we go. All right, so on the 9th, Seaweed said, I don't get to listen live too often, but you provided such a valuable service to us humans. With love, Salty Steve. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. On the 2nd, Claire Cat said, you are must-see in our house anytime you're on the air. Thank you very much for all you and Lisa do. Blessings. And that was it. Just those two. All right. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. 10:30 tonight. If you want to join me over on Badlands, I'm going to be doing Baseless Conspiracies at 10:30. And it looks like I might have something to say. Nope, nothing over on Cash App. Thought I did, but I don't. All right, you guys. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Good luck. God bless. Don't forget about the other sponsors of the program. You can find them in the description of this video. Also, you can find my website, my email, a whole bunch of stuff. And that's basically it. So I'll see you guys either tonight or tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. Good luck and God bless.